Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome back our very dear friends from AlzAuthors to discuss a new poetry anthology that they've just published. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks.
Absolutely. It's always great to see you guys. And Marianne, you're a part of the board here at All Home Care Matters, and we're big supporters of AlzAuthors. So anytime we can help welcome a new author or talk about an event that you're hosting, which right now you have the poetry anthology. Let's start there, Marianne. Share with our viewers and listeners about the new book and the poetry anthology.
Yeah, we're really excited. Our new poetry anthology, it just published June 1st, and we've been working on it for about a year now. We did a poetry event last year for National Poetry Month, and we had about 30-something poets show up to read, and we asked them if they'd like to submit a poem, and we would maybe put together a book, and they did. So we have well over 100 poems in the book now, and Sue helped put it all together for us, and Anne was also helpful. She was an editor as well. So we finally got the book out. It's in Kindle and paperback right now. And we just encourage everybody who's interested in caregiving or Alzheimer's dementia to pick it up and read, because there are some beautiful poems and stories inside.
Yeah. Anne, were you also a contributor to this book?
I was, and I was actually a poet before I was a memoirist. So this project is very close to my heart. I really feel the incredible power of poetry and how it can touch people who especially are in the depths of caregiving with dementia. You know, you can just take a short time and read a poem. You can flip through the book and find something and hopefully connect to your situation and be comforted and just know that you're not alone.
For a brief moment, I thought you were going to say I was a poet and I didn't know it. But you didn't go there. I was hoping you did.
No, I didn't go there.
So, Sue, you also have contributed to this new book as well?
Yes, I do have 3 poems in there. And I did a lot of the dealing with commas and spacing and typeface and things of that nitty gritty, with a lot of help from Anne and Marianne.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask each of you if you have a favorite poem you'd like to maybe read to the viewers and listeners from the new book. We'll start with Marianne.
Oh, I'm going first. I have to find it. I like to read the poems that are contributed by Peter Berry, because he's one of our authors who is currently living with dementia. He has early onset. I think you may have met him, Lance, right? You did a podcast with him and Deb. So he has a book of poetry, or musings, they call it, about living in the fog of dementia. So I'd like to read one of his poems.
Yeah, please.
This one is called Unpredictable Dementia. Unpredictable dementia. Some days I walk tall, straight, and strong, and other days I am weak, bent over and old, like living with a wild-eyed horse. Uncontrolled, unpredictable dementia. Dementia is my nothing, and my nothing is coming towards me.
Powerful. So short, but I mean, it says a lot. Absolutely. Anne, did you have one you would like to share?
I'm going to start with one, assuming we have time to read 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just from another contributor to the book. It's Catalin Mezzi or Mezzi, and it's from the book called Song Offerings, and it's called 2 Rusty Knives. Using dentures, eyeglasses, and a few old rags, I rig up my mother every morning. Between her skeletal legs, I tuck a diaper. I pull up socks and carpet slippers on her feet. Then, holding on to each other by both hands, we shuffle out to the living room. She, the champion of independence, who never depended on anyone. I, the champion of liberty, who escaped her as a teenager because I could not put up with her rigid ways. Folks who knew us then would be surprised to see us now. We are two rusty knives that God rubs together in order to sharpen us.
Yeah. Very poignant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing. These poets, they really write about so many different types of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have been through the caregiving experience, even if it's not the same as yours, you can relate to some aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How did you guys, we'll go to Sue here in one moment, but how did you decide who was going to contribute? Was it just open to any of the authors that wanted to contribute, or did you find some and ask them? How did that work?
That was my doing. We decided we were going to do the poetry event with the authors who are in AlzAuthors with poetry books. So I sifted through all of that, and there were like 13 of them. So I wrote this invitation to the event in a list of these 13 email addresses and sent it out. And the next thing I know, I'm getting an email back from somebody who was just so thrilled to have been invited, and she wasn't on my list. So I said, well, what happened here? So I go back and I look at the email, and I saw that I had emailed the invitation to everybody on the AlzAuthors mailing list. So that was like crazy. And all these people that we didn't know who had written poetry wanted to be a part of it. So that was terrific. And then there was one, we had just brought in a brand new poet called Margaret Stowowie, who published The Storms of the Inland Sea, which is another anthology. And she wanted to know if she could invite her poets that were in her book.
Oh, wow.
So we were like, at this point, we were like, the more the merrier. It will be what it will be. So that's how we ended up with, I think, 34 poets in attendance. And
43.
43. So we, so it ended up being a 2-hour event. We were planning for like 1 hour, but it went to 2 hours. So, but it was well worth it. It was,
yeah.
And it was like my mistake, and it turned out to be a good thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sue, let's go to you. You're one of the new AlzAuthors, and do you have a poem that you contributed or one that you really are fond of that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'd like to share this one by Pauletta Hansel from her book Palindrome. It's called My Mother Has Stopped Telling Me She Loves Me.
Mm.
Look at us now. My mother finally bound to her wheelchair. That's how they like it in the nursing home. She thinks she is walking, one foot and then the other. Her lumbering four-wheeled body follows, and behind her trails Miss Push Me, Pull Me. That's what she muttered at me yesterday. A sudden spark that flew my meddling hands down from the handles of her chair. And even when we sit together, fingers entwined, she pushes back away. I pull her toward me. Memorize her face, the folds beside her eyes, the lips that purse now for a kiss, a dab of oatmeal in one corner. I say, I love you, Mom. And then she's off again. We dangle one side and the other of the teeter-totter air.
Wow.
Pauletta was she was the Cincinnati Poet Laureate a while ago. So we're thrilled to have just such a variety of poets who, many who have written poetry for years. And then there are some who, as Marianne has said, they've just written one poem about dementia, and that's special to them because of their loved one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know today, and when this is going to be broadcast, it will already have passed, but today at 3:00 Eastern, AlzAuthors is doing a live event. You guys want to talk about what that's going to entail?
Yeah, we have a number of the poets who contributed to the anthology are coming to help us launch the book and to do another poetry reading. And that will be recorded and will be on our podcast and on our YouTube channel in the future. So when people hear this, it may be there.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of other poetry events as well.
Well, we can get it up on the screen in post-production too, because it'll probably have already been posted. But it's not just, local people. You mentioned Peter Barry, over in the UK. AlzAuthors reaches the globe. It's not just a local thing. So anybody listening or watching, they don't have to think it's just a United States organization or nonprofit. You guys have authors and contributors from all over the globe. And,
Yes.
It's resources and it's podcasts and it's newsletters and support and books for people who have been, touched by dementia, kind of like Sue. Sue, you've written several poetry books, Gravel Road Ahead, The Widow at the Piano, and The Blue Chip Stamp Guitar. And full-length collections is Dining al Fresco with My Dog, which sounds like a very interesting title. I'd love to know the story behind that. And you've written Stories Grandma Never Told, Childless by Marriage, and No Way Out of This, Loving a Partner with Alzheimer's, and you like to play music whenever people will listen to you. So tell us about your relationship. Your husband's been touched by dementia, your husband, Fred. How did the two of you meet, and what were your lives like prior to the diagnosis?
Oh, wow. It's a long story there. We met, my brother worked for him. He was my brother's boss in the recreation department in San Jose, California. I had given up my newspaper job to go sing with this traveling show, and it went bankrupt. So we both wound up at a Christmas party at my brother's house, and I was alone and unemployed, and Fred had just split up with his wife, and sparks happened, and we hit it off and started dating and got married. It was a very romantic thing for both of us. We did not have any kids together. He retired early. They shut down his department, early retirement. So that happened, and we moved to Oregon to live on the coast and live out our happy retirement. And then he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he was home for 7 years and then 2 years in nursing homes before he passed.
So your background is music and writing, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I have a degree in journalism and worked in newspapers for about 30 years, but I've also always been a musician too. So I've always written poetry and fiction and other things.
Were you and Fred older when the two of you met, or what age did you get married roughly?
Well, I was 33 and he was 48 when we got married. So he was about 14 and a half years older.
Okay.
And but he was bionic. He never got sick. He was so physically fit, so healthy. He used his brain all the time. People are always saying you have to use your mind and everything, and he did. So I thought I would have him for a very long time. Turned out not to be true.
Well, what were some of the signs that you started seeing that gave you some concern? Because I'm assuming, like most people, like Anne and Marianne probably have spoken to with other authors and things, a lot of lay people don't necessarily really give much thought to some of the signs and symptoms until they get more drastic. What really brought you concern with Fred when you started noticing, okay, something's definitely not right?
Well, I had already had an introduction to dementia with my grandfather.
Okay.
He had a vascular dementia, but we'd gone down that whole road, and he didn't know who I was or much of anything. He had it pretty bad, and so I was used to that. And as a writer, I had written several articles about it and done quite a bit of research. Fred was always a forgetful guy. He needed his calendar to know what was happening the day, and he never remembered people's names, but people just thought, well, that's Fred, the absent-minded professor kind of thing. His mother died in 2001, and he was with her. And that night he told me, I can't remember things. And so, you're upset. It's okay. But it explained a lot, because we had been having arguments for a year or so where he just didn't seem to remember things I had told him. And I'd think, well, you don't care enough because you don't remember what I told you, and it's important to me. And But yeah, gradually his memory problems got worse and worse. And it took a while to get a diagnosis because his doctor said, nah, he's fine, or he should stop drinking so much wine. It took a while to get a real diagnosis. But yeah, he was forgetting more and more things. And, he lost his sense of smell. We had a little fire in the house and he didn't realize what was going on, So he lost his job. He had a part-time job up here that involved some accounting, and he just got so he couldn't do it. Yeah. So lots of things.
Now, I know you had mentioned the two of you did not have children, and then, after he had retired, you moved to Oregon.
Right.
And you mentioned that's really far from your families. What kind of help? I mean, you're kind of like on an island of yourself, right? I mean, there's no family, no friends. You're in a new state. Where did you find and what kind of support did you have?
Well, he did have 3 children, but they all lived far away. I joined the local Alzheimer's support group. That was helpful. Yeah, there's no neurologist or anything like that for about 60 miles from here. So that was not available. I was involved in my church doing music there, and so I had friends there who helped somewhat, but we were kind of an island, really.
Yeah. And I know a lot of families that we encounter and that I'm sure, with Marianne and Anne encounter with the authors and their stories, you kind of come to face with some difficult choices and decisions and, what to share, what not to share. And, you mentioned them as impossible choices. When do we tell people? When do we take away the car keys? And how do we pay for their care? And when do we bring in home care or decide to put them into a facility? And how far do you go with medical decisions? What choices for you were some of the most challenging? And if you could go back, Sue, and I have a little bit of an issue with this question because I think it could almost impose, guilt or shame or, almost like you're being hard on yourself. But if you could go back, what would you do differently or what choices would you make differently?
Well, there's 2 things because I have thought about this question quite a bit. Yeah. One, and I think it's really important for everybody involved in this, is that I would have insisted that his children and other members of the family be more involved, even if they could not be here physically, to be more involved in the decision making and just as a team in whatever way they could do it, as opposed to, you got this, right, Sue? Which I don't got this. So I would insist on more help. And I don't know if I had the courage before this happened, but right. Now I think I do. The other thing is, toward the end, Fred had a problem. Poor guy. It was a very personal kind of problem. His prostate went wonky and he could not urinate. And he had a series of catheters. He had a surgery to install one directly into his bladder, install a tube directly into his bladder. And I would not have done that. He had a doctor who was saying, we should let him go, and another doctor saying, no, we can fix this up. But those last months were just torture. And I know he wouldn't have wanted it. So I would have let him go.
I was going to ask you, did you and Fred ever discuss like end of life care decisions or what his wishes or your wishes are?
Yeah, I mean, we did. We did all the paperwork when he was first diagnosed, and he did not want any extra care. So yeah, and he wanted to use, Oregon has the death with dignity law, right. And he wanted to use that. You really can't with Alzheimer's because you have to be able to administer it yourself and be within 6 months of you have to have a terminal diagnosis, and he wouldn't be able to do that, but he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long have you been writing poetry?
Since I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay. A long time. And I would assume, anybody that's been on that caregiving journey, especially with something like dementia, their life, their outlook, and kind of their perspective on things sometimes change. How did that experience change the way you wrote or the way you view things?
Oh, I've been writing throughout. I think I'm more open, more honest with what I write now. Of course, I've learned a lot more about writing just, you know, through the years of countless classes and just doing it. But I think, as a person, I think I'm more compassionate and have a bigger understanding of the big picture of what's important and what's not, and just have a lot more love to give because I understand now why old women cry. you know.
Well, in being a professional writer and having written since you were 6, 7 years old, like you mentioned, did you find it more therapeutic writing, or did that provide the therapeutic benefit that it might a person who normally doesn't write and they're using this as their outlet?
Oh yeah, yeah, and many of the worst situations, I would spill it out and write it, either in gulps of prose or in poetry. But yeah, it was definitely an outlet that was necessary for me.
Yeah.
And I had like 1,000 pages of journal when I
Wow.
got ready to write my memoir. And you can't do a 1,000-page book, but it was very important.
How did you come to meet or discover AlzAuthors?
I don't know. I don't remember. I saw it online and thought, wow,
Yeah.
I got to do this.
It's a great resource.
Yeah.
And Marianne, when you hear somebody like this who, wasn't formally a part of AlzAuthors, and then they go through that experience, and then now they're a contributor and just a walking, I guess, supporter of AlzAuthors like we are, what does that mean to you guys when you hear it from the authors themselves?
Well, it means everything to us, because we are a small team and everyone is a volunteer. We have no paid employees, and we got work done, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of things we would like to do, and we can't really get to them because we just have so many hours in the day. So we're always looking for people to help. And Sue, she reached out to me she reached out to us and said she had just completed her president term in her poets organization, and she needed something to do. And did we have anything for her to do? And at the time, I was like trying to put together this poetry anthology, and I knew that Sue had already published several books of poetry, so she was the perfect candidate. So I said, I absolutely have something for you to do. Would you like to put together the poetry book? And so that's the reason why it exists today, because I don't know if I would have put it together so quickly, or it would have languished probably on my hard drive for a while. So we really appreciate when especially the authors, and that's usually who it is. Most of the people that are on our team, they are authors. They've got books with us, and they've all been on a caregiving journey. So they really know everything about being an author, and then also about being a dementia caregiver. So they bring a lot of experience to the table.
And I'll add to that as a reader and a writer myself, I was searching for books about dementia and the caregiving journey when I was going through my own caregiving journey, and there were very few out there. That was over 20 years ago. And so it just fills my heart to know that we now offer the very thing that I was searching for, and that I know will help people get through their journey. Because whether it's a poetry book, memoir, caregiving guide, each one of those in its own way really supports the caregiver. And a lot of people don't realize that, memoir is just as instructive, maybe more, than a caregiving guide, because it really goes through the life of somebody who was suddenly impacted, whether they were expecting it or not, and how they dealt with it in all the little ways. So it's such a joy to have new authors and to know that our website is reaching people who need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say all the time, AlzAuthors is really a one-stop shop for anybody that's going through a dementia caregiving journey. I always bring this up when I talk with Marianne. every book is categorized based on the experience that you need, whether it's a son taking care of a father or parent or spouse or early onset, it covers every basis. And, a frustrating thing for me, kind of on the peripheral, a little bit on the outside, is how do you get everybody to know about AlzAuthors? I mean, I think like with Sue, let's say she never discovered it, and the benefits that AlzAuthors probably has provided to her that she's now returning and providing to others through being a part of AlzAuthors, that would be missing if she didn't know about it. So how do we get in touch with these people to let them know that AlzAuthors is out there? Because there is so much great benefit, not only for the loved one with dementia, but really for the family and the loved ones who are going through that journey.
I feel like we're like a pond of ducks. Maybe we're beautifully swimming along, but our little feet are just paddling as hard as we can, doing everything we possibly can to just, at least show the world on social media, this is what we offer. But I'm sure we could do more.
I think, well, yeah, I think everyone can always do more, but it's what is it that you need to do that's going to bring the most benefit? That's the $1 million question. Caregivers, like Sue, when you were going through your caregiving with Fred, they're so solely focused on that person that they don't always have that luxury of being able to look outside of that experience to try to find these resources. Like even when my wife and I were caring for my father, I never used the word family caregiver, never used the word caregiver, but neither did the healthcare system or the doctors or nurses either, and so somebody's got to help bridge that gap to these families so that they are aware of these things, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's frustrating, right, when you're going through something. I just applaud all the work that AlzAuthors is doing. I'm hopefully one of your biggest fans, if not the biggest, because, everybody needs that benefit and that support when they're going through that caregiving journey. And you guys are doing everything there is. And I'm still waiting, Marianne, for the 6-word memoir to come out, because we contributed to that one. But I thought that was such a unique, really neat idea. Hopefully one day when things slow down, that will get published as well, and we'll have you guys back on to talk about that too.
No, I'd love to get that one out. I was just thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, after this poetry book, I need a break. Somebody asked me, is it going to be an audio? It should be an audio. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Nobody can pick that up. That's like monumental task. I can't do it. So it would be great.
Listen to the YouTube recordings.
You can audio, because we have the events, the poetry events, like the one we're doing today. So you can hear the poets read their work, the individual poets read their own work through our podcast and YouTube channel.
Well, I want to just kind of give you guys a moment before we wrap up here to, share whatever you want your message to be for viewers and listeners. And we'll start with you, Sue.
Writing is a really good way to get it out, even if you're not a professional writer of any sort. Just, you got to get it, put it somewhere, because if you just hold on to it, it's going to make you explode. And there's so much you can't tell the person that you're taking care of. You can't discuss it with them, and that's so hard. So write it down.
How about you, Anne?
Okay, what comes to me is that being a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's and dementia is a really challenging role to play.
Yes.
And if you haven't been there before, or you haven't watched somebody do it, it can hit you kind of out of the blue and just knock you flat. And that is where I feel like AlzAuthors comes in. We as authors have all been there, and we know that, challenging place where we lose our footing and we don't know what's going on. And that is where our stories come from. And we write them to really reach the heart of those who are experiencing it. And our hope is really to reach whoever is in need.
All right, Marianne, last words to you.
We just want caregivers to know that they are not alone. It can be very isolating. And people can feel as though nobody understands them or knows what they're going through. But the authors in AlzAuthors, they've been there and they've done that. And it really will benefit you to take 15, 20 minutes a day out of your day to look at the resources, to find a book or a podcast or even an event, because we do virtual events pretty regularly, to attend something or read something, listen to something that will help you. You'll know that you're not alone, and you will learn different strategies and techniques for managing some of the difficulties that you encounter in dementia care.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you stole what I was going to say. You're not alone, I think, is so crucial for people. So I'll go to my second favorite, and that's take care of yourself so that you can take care of your loved ones.
Right.
So
Very
AlzAuthors, thank you so much to Anne, Sue, and our dear friend Marianne. Thank you guys so much. And please say hello to Jean for us. And we look forward to having you guys back on again in the future.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much for all your
Thank you so
support.
much, Lance.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks,
You
Lance.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to our good friends from AlzAuthors for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.